So just once again, talking about receiving psychic inspiration from either dead relatives or guides or subtle energy, because physical energy is not as subtle as spiritual energy. It's subtle energy until you become acclimated with it, attuned with it, used to it, right? And then it becomes really loud. More loud, it becomes more normal because you're used to that vibration. But when you're not used to that vibration, it's just like these little thoughts that's just so easy to dismiss, because it doesn't really sort of hit you over the head unless it does. Sometimes it does. I mean, guides can get really, like I've spoken to many people on the show. I think it was with Bill Bennett, who made the documentary called Intuition, PGS, Personal Guidance System, Intuition. And he said that when he was a young journalist in Paris racing at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch a plane, he had a voice in his head that was really loud saying, "Slow down." And he's going, "What? I'm not slowing down. I'll be late. I'm going to miss this plane." And he starts speeding up, and then the voice got louder. "Slow down," like really loud. Like that was guidance, right? That was loud to a mind that wasn't acclimated to it. So that can happen, but that saved his life. He slowed down and then a truck would have, run him over. So it can be really loud, but on the most part, it's not. It's subtle and it's the little thoughts, and, pay attention. So when you ask a question, I think what a lot of us do is when we speak to spirit or spirit guides or dead relatives, like you said, Tammy, I speak to her all the time. Do you expect her to answer back?
Not really.
There you go.
Not really. I don't.
Right. Well, imagine if you expect it. Like when you have a conversation with me, you expect me to answer you, right? Like if you're going to talk to me, you don't expect me to just sit here and go, like you expect a response. So when you expect a response, you're more open to receiving, because the not expecting it, even though it happens, but when you're not expecting it, you're actually blocking yourself from that subtle energy. So you can do it in meditation, or you can just do it washing the dishes at the sink, or I find that things like that, sometimes when we sit to meditate, and we try and purposely have this, we get a bit stressed out about it. Like, I can't do it. I don't know if this will work. Am I good enough? Like all our insecurities come up. Like, I'm not psychic. I don't think I can do that. Will she talk to me? She might be busy. Like we come up with all sorts of crap why we can't do it, right? But if you're doing something like that's occupying your mind, like washing the dishes, and you're just you're just resting, and you just sort of chat, you just chat in your head, you'll find that you have this two-way conversation going. So it's really just a conversation in your mind where there is a two-way conversation. So it's like you ask a question, they answer, or they respond, and then they talk back, and just like you have a conversation with anybody else. And it's super simple and super easy. There's Sarah. Hey, Sarah. It's super simple and super easy. And when you tell yourself this is easy and this is simple, you'll have a different experience than if you say to yourself, this is difficult, or I have to be special, or I have to be gifted. But we all have psychic ability, every single one of us. And we all operate like that as children until we're taught out of it. So it's always there. It's always there. That energy is always there, always speaking to us, but we're just not acclimated to the frequency. We're just not used to the energy, the vibration, until we become used to it. And then when you become used to it, it's just a part of your daily life. You don't need to like sit in meditation and like summon the spirits. It just becomes just, you ask, they answer. You ask, they answer. Sometimes. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, just reassure him and hug him and tell him everything's okay. Can you imagine? Because you know what? Because time and space is happening simultaneously. When you do talk to your inner child, that inner child is actually hearing a voice that's coming from you in the future. Like we call them our guides or the mob, but it can actually be us in the future talking to us. So we can even go and see our future, because Vlad is young, so he's got a lot of future selves in front of him. We can actually go and talk to our future selves, and just like we can talk to our past selves, because all those selves still exist in time and space. And this is a concept that I understood on an intellectual level. But when I did that session with Lois, when I was talking to my inner child, I had the sense of that reality, that I was talking to a being, just like I would talk to a being in spirit. I mean, it's subtle. It's not like talking to a physical person in front of me, but it kind of is too. But I felt I've had that real sense of talking to a being, even though it was me in my past life. My past life, as in this life, not a past life, but in me in my past. And if we think about it, our body, I think it takes 2 years for every single cell in our body to be a completely different cell. We're literally not wearing the same body today that we wore a couple of years ago. So we are these completely different, separate beings. And a lot of the ideas and thought forms, even though they carry on, we're changing all the time. We're changing. So there is these entities who were us that are these different. They are a different entity. They're different, even though they have the same consciousness streaming through them, our soul, if you like, they're a different idea. So it's like when I had a client years ago, and he was an older, well, I say older, I was younger. He was in his 60s, like I'm getting there now too, but he had held he'd held a lot of pain in his heart because his mother had died when he was 2 years old. And for some reason, he had thought that he was the cause of it. So he's a man in his 60s holding this pain for a good 60 years, right? That he was the cause of his mother's death. So I took him into meditation when we went and spoke to his mother. And he said that as he was doing that, he kept getting his mother's face, when I asked him to remember his mother's face, was morphing into his daughter's face. So his daughter was in her 30s at the time. She was the woman, she was the one that got him into the sort of stuff that I was doing, told him to go meditate, told him to go to Vipassana. And he really wasn't that into what I was doing, but he came for a session anyway. And it was his daughter that prompted him. And I said to him, "Is your mother your daughter?" And he said, "No," like this. And I remember I said to my guides, "Oh, that didn't work." And they said, "Oh, Karen, ask a different question, wrong question to ask." And I said, "Okay, let me rephrase that. Is your mother the same soul or spirit as your daughter?" And at that point, he started bawling because he realized the truth, that this woman he had missed for 60 years had actually been in his life for a good 30 odd years. So when I talked to my guides about that afterwards and said, like, why was there that distinction? They said, well, of course his mother wasn't his daughter, because it's a completely different idea, a different body, a different personality, a different life, a different relationship. So even though it's the same soul or same stream of consciousness that runs through the body, the personality complex and the body is a completely different idea. So it's not the same. So you're never the same in each life. Even in this life, we're not the same. You're not the same person today as you were even a couple of years ago, right? You're a different idea now. And that really got me to see that, that's that distinction. Same energy that flows through, but you're flowing through a different mind-body complex, mind-body personality complex. So when you do speak to your child self or your future self, you are speaking to you, but you're speaking to a different idea of you. Does that make sense? Even when you're speaking to your past life self. Obviously, if you're a woman or a man in this life and you're speaking to a past life self, you can be a different sex, different nationality, speak a different language, like a completely different idea, but the same consciousness exploring all the variety that Earth life has to offer, even in one lifetime. So, So when you spoke to how old were you when you spoke to your child self, Laddie?
It seems like.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. When I was thinking about what I did with Lois the other day, there's an energy in me. So I don't know if you saw Tammy. The last show I talked about it, but I reached out for a session with Lois Hollis, who's someone we had on the show last year, who does. She calls herself a shame guilt educator, and so she takes you back to a memory when you're a child where you experience shame or guilt for the first time, where you were beating up on yourself as not being good enough, and heals that. People have called it inner child work. She actually called it soul retrieval work. Palladian. She said the Palladians gave her this work, which I loved. She revealed that on the show for the first time. I loved that. She said, I can't say that on other people's shows because it's too out there for most people. But she said, on your show, I can say that. And I'm like, yes. And and so I had a session with her, and I saw a memory when I was about 12 where a little boy had shamed me. And then I was asking my guides, how does that dovetail with the shame a lot of light workers hold, where they feel like if they rise above, like if they shine too brightly, they'll be murdered. So we have this past where witches were burnt at the stake, and the church has made psychic ability, the devil's work, and so there's a lot of horrible history where when we come into our intuitive and feminine power, creative power, we've been, knocked down or murdered. And a lot of light workers hold that fear in their energy. It's like, don't shine too brightly, you'll get in trouble. You'll get in trouble. Someone will, there's a fear there. And I've definitely had that. I've seen it. I've seen that. And I remember years ago, we were talking about, at the Academy of Light, we were talking about the Templars being all burnt by the church and all this stuff, all this stuff. And I was asking my guides, how does the little boy shaming me at 12 dovetail with that? And they were saying, well, he just activated that energy within you. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it was just so interesting how the puzzle pieces were all coming together. Like you're holding an energy that's been passed down through generations of it's not okay to shine as a psychic or a light worker because you'll be killed, you'll be burnt at the stake as a witch or whatever. And then some little boy says that I'm vain as a 12-year-old, and that activates that fear in me, like, you've got to hide. So that was the energy that I carried. Lois had said to me, what does the little 12-year-old look like? And I said, I can't see her. I can see my house. I can see my mother, who's been long dead. I can see my brothers, but I can't see her. Oh, what is she wearing? She said. I'm like, I don't see her. And she said, that's because she disappeared. And I realized at that moment, I had made this decision to disappear. Don't be seen. Don't be seen, which made it really hard for me to put my face on YouTube because I'm holding this, don't be seen, which I think I see with a lot of you who I say, do a video on YouTube. Even you, Angela, you had that fear, remember, about sort of doing YouTube videos and stuff. And, we can say we're shy. We can come up with some sort of but actually it's because we're holding an energy that could be, because we were burned at the stake as a witch or whatever, or it can come from something that happened in your childhood. But all of them link. And that's what my guides were showing me, that even though it was a little boy that said I was vain and so I decided to disappear when I was 12, it was actually linked to that same energy through time and space. So I might have been burnt at the stake in one life and then called vain in this life, and in another life, it's all that same energy that's playing out in different scenarios, in different lives. And when we heal it in this life, we heal it through all time and space. And that's how we evolve this world, as we heal our own pain and our own distortion. It's so cool. Isn't it cool? It's so cool.
So I'm very thankful that you went through what you did, because it's really helping us.
Oh, it's going to make me cry. Yeah, it does. It all helps. Look, healing, Vladdy, you're young. Healing is a constant thing. I don't think there's ever a time where you're healed and you're all like, you know, you're perfect. I think that if while we're here on earth, as long as we're here on earth, we will be, you know, healing distortion. And I think that's why we came. It's not like I'm going to heal myself and then I'm going to be perfect so that I can lead a happy life or do the work I'm here to do. That's not what we're doing. We came in as healers to heal, so that as we heal the energy on ourselves, we affect the collective. And that is a lifelong process. There is no like, you're going to get it right one day. No, it's just a lifelong process. And so after 30 years of doing healing work on myself, I'm still finding stuff to heal, you know. So yeah, so it's beautiful. And it's beautiful work that we're doing as we heal ourselves. We're, you know, because we are one with everyone. So as we heal ourselves, we heal everybody. I love that. What are you doing? What was so interesting when I did the sesh with Lois is that as I said, I've done a lot of healing. So I had a very traumatic childhood, you know, beaten up by my father, watched my mother die of cancer, and my brothers and I tried to kill each other constantly. Like, we came from a very distorted, angry fan. I saw my father beat up my mother, you know, physically, violently, and we were beating up on each other. It was pretty ugly, right? And so I've done a lot of healing. So when this little thought came up of a little boy shaming me, I didn't think it was important because I'd been through so many worse things. And that's when my guide said, "You've had that thought come up, run with it." I realized that all those other things I had healed, like I'd done the healing, like I'd forgiven my father, I'd forgiven my mother, I'd forgiven my brothers. So I'd done all that healing. But that little thought that came up had something that I hadn't looked at, and I hadn't, it was still active in my vibration, still active in me. So it's so interesting. It was so interesting because it seems so insignificant, and we can sort of laugh at it. Like when our kids, you know, they go around with a boyfriend, like a 12-year-old. They're not really having real relationships. They just sort of, we used to say going round with each other, right? we just say, okay, now we're boyfriend and girlfriend. And there would be like no difference between friends, except that we had announced that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And then we were like, and then you announce that you're not boyfriend and girlfriend anymore, but there's still hurt that happens when you get dropped. We used to say, I'm dropping you. You're dropped. I'm not going around with you anymore. And so there's still hurt that happens, and that hurt carries on. It just carries through and stays there, sort of lingering, even though it seemed funny and cute and insignificant. I see that with my own daughter. You probably see it with your children too, like the little things that happen that we see as cute and funny. It's not cute and funny to them. It's big. It's like big stuff happens. It's gonna be okay. Everything's going to be okay. I was just saying, I think you heard that. I was just saying before that the healing doesn't stop. We come to do the healing. That's what we're doing in this lifetime. We're healing ourselves. We're healing others. We're shifting. We're changing vibration. We're transmuting fear to love. That's what the light workers are doing. Everyone who's a light worker is doing that. And, you know, like all the people that held distortion before, like I was thinking about my family and my mother, they were never going to do this work. My brothers aren't going to do this work. You know, my grandparents weren't going to do this work. The light workers are the ones that come into density and have lived all this fraught existence, whether they've been burnt at the stake or, you know, whatever they've experienced, that are going to actually address it and do it and transmute the energy. And that's the work we're doing, whether we're doing it with clients. It's great to help facilitate each other, because that's what a healer does, really. And the reason I reached out to Lois is because I saw the distortion that I was carrying, because I had this pain on my hip and my knee, and then I saw it was my congested liver. And liver is like when you hold a lot of unresolved negative emotion. It does sort of tend to clog up your liver. And you can do it yourself, like you've all been doing, or if you want someone, like Sarah said, just to hold your focus. So a facilitator sees things you might not see, like with Lois. She was asking me, what does little Karen look like? And I'm like, I can't see her. And Lois goes, that's because she disappeared. And it just hit me. It just like, and maybe I couldn't have seen that. But so they see things you can't see, and they hold your focus so that you can like stay there and do the work. rather than we can get so distracted. Like we see it in meditation, then we think, oh, I have to put the washing out or do something. We can get distracted. But a healing facilitator just keeps you there, keeps you focused. I find with so many of my clients, when I'm talking to them and I want to do a process with them, I'll ask them a question and they'll start to answer the question, and then they'll go off on tangents and start talking to me about completely different things. And then I'll just pull them back and say, let's stay here, let's stay focused there. And they go, oh, sorry. And they'll come back and then they'll go off on tangents. It's just the human mind just wanders all over the place. So a facilitator just keeps you focused and keeps you there so that you can actually transmute the energy. Because I think the ego mind is trying to protect us by making us not look at it. Like, oh no, that's too scary, I don't want to look at that. Like I didn't like that feeling, so I don't want to go there. And so your ego mind pulls you away, and a facilitator keeps you there and says, it's not scary, it's just energy. Let's just look into it. Let's look at it. Let's dissolve it. It's not scary. It's nothing to be frightened of. Let's go there. Let's dissolve it. Let's look at it through the eyes of love instead of through the eyes of fear. Yeah. So yeah, that's what facilitators do. So who's up for helping Sarah? Laddie, you're the healer. You want to help Sarah facilitate that? Or Diane, she's up for it?
Yeah, I would. I'm not sure that I know how to do it, but I certainly would be happy to give it a go.
Well, your guides are saying, yes, you do, yes, you do, yes, you do, yes, you do.
Oh.
They said that repeatedly. That's why I repeated it. Absolutely you do. Absolutely you know how to do it. And remember, when you are helping people, I always turn up. It's like me talking, just like I'm yakking now. It's me, but I always feel like I'm leaning on them the whole time. And you might see me, if I get stumped, I just look up and I just connect to them, like, what do you want to say? And just let them lead, let them run the show, really. You know, I always feel like my guides, once you've learnt what to do, it's like a little baby learns to walk. At first, the mother holds the little baby's hand and steadies the little baby as he gets his balance, right? And then lets go, and the little baby walks and then falls down. And then he gets up again, and the mother holds his hand, or the father holds his hand, and the little baby walks and falls over a few times, maybe gets a few bumps, and then eventually he gets the hang of it and he walks by himself. And that's what I feel our guides do too. Like they hold our hand until we get the hang of it, and then they let us run with it. What do you think, Angela? She's nodding. Yeah.
I agree. Like I notice now that I'm like coming into myself more, right? The more I speak, as I speak, they'll give me confirmation, and I'll get these head nods, like them giving me confirmation that, yeah, that's you heard it right and you said it right. Because I would ask, like in the past, I would ask, did I write that down right? Or did I say that, correctly? But now it's kind of more in the moment, I'm hearing it and it's just coming.
Yeah. Exactly. And sometimes, I think that with our guides, I've always called my mob my higher self. Like my higher self isn't one entity or one soul. It's like a stream of consciousness, which is a combination of many, many, many experiences, including my experience, not all mine, like everyone's. It's like it's the collective experience of this planet and other planets. It's a bit too vast for our poor puny little human minds to cope with, but I feel like they are me. And just like we are God, right? So if we are God and God is everything, that thought is just too explosive to even try and contemplate as a human when we have this identity and separateness and in singularity. And the thing about living this human experience, even though we're having this singular identified human experience, like I'm identity, I'm in one body, we're still acclimating to the collective. So as a human race, we're doing that. Like we have these very separate experiences. It's like your house, my house, me, mine, yours, like the separate. But as we move in consciousness, we're getting more connected so that we have more of a community feel and we'll have less sort of like my car, your car, my house. So even Airbnb and Uber is sort of the same energy as we're moving into the collective. So I have a car and I can get in my car and drive you around, so you don't need to have a car, so you can share my car. So it ceases to be my car, your car. It's like we can share this. And Airbnb is the same. I have a house and I have a spare room. Instead of me living here all by myself or just me and my family, now you can come and share my house. So it's that same energy that we're moving into a more collective way of being. It's the same with guidance. And so your guides are you. They're not separate to you, they are you. So as you start to acclimate to their energy more, you start to be more of who they are as a human. Yeah. And see life as they see life instead of through your linear, separateness mind. Yeah, it's a fascinating ride, isn't it? It's just so cool. You know, the creepiness about it is that the skull or the skeleton has been so used in our media systems, Hollywood, cartoons, as scary. It has been deemed as scary.
Yeah.
So the thing is that the skeleton and the skull are the bones of our body. But then death has been made scary. Like death is the worst thing. I remember Esther Hicks said this, you know, you humans, you know, you've so demonized death. I don't think she used the word demonized, but made death such a terrible thing that you give your worst criminals the death penalty, as if killing someone could be the worst thing that you do. And all you do is like they just reemerge into pure positive energy. So how could that be such a terrible thing? I think it'd be much worse to be incarcerated than it would be to be killed. So the whole thing around death has been so demonized, just like the feminine principle has been demonized. Again, the word woo-woo, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think I might call the second book Woo Awakenings or Woo-Woo Awakenings, and just reclaim that word woo-woo and use it in a fun way, because woo-woo is a derogatory term for somebody that believes in all that we believe. Like, oh, you're so woo-woo, you know, like we've used it in a derogatory term. And so we can reclaim that word and be proud of being woo-woo. Like, I love my woo-woo, you know, and reclaim it. And it's the same with the skull, like reclaim it. It's like the building block to the physical body. It's not spooky. It's not scary. And you can talk to your kids like that, you know, like, when you see a skull, what do you think of? And why do you think of it like that? And then they'll say, oh, because, you know, and just get them to notice that they've been conditioned through their cartoon systems or the media outlets. And maybe they don't have to actually think the way that they've been told to think, that they can think for themselves.
Yeah.
That's what education is, right? Is like getting kids to think for themselves. Something that I've said a few times, I'm going to say it again, like I watched a documentary which said that there was this goddess called Sina, S-I-N-A, who represented the moon. She was a sacred goddess of the feminine principle, a moon goddess. And then when the church was formulating, they used her name to say that people are sinners that went against the church, like you're a sinner. So they took her name, which was the energy of the feminine principle, and then they damned it as a demon. You know, they demonized feminine principles and made it a sin. So the same with psychic ability is a sin. And my girlfriend's mother, who's in her 80s, who just loves psychic stuff, but she's a Christian, right? One of those born again type Christians. And she's like, oh no, psychic ability is a sin. It's the work of the devil. But she loves it, but she still thinks it's a sin. Anyway, so there's a group of us here in Sydney that are reclaiming the word sinner, and we're calling ourselves the Sinner Sisters, you know.
Oh, how cute.
Yeah, and using the spelling S-I-N-A and sister as in S-I-S-T-A-R, sister.
Oh.
Isn't that cute? So
yeah, that's
I think
very
that
cute.
we need to reclaim this energy, because we've just been conditioned into thinking that a skull is spooky and feminine principles of sin and all this stuff. It's just conditioning.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think the younger kids are a lot desensitized to skulls. I think it's more like my generation because they have, it's on all of their clothes, and being close here to Mexico, there's a whole, what do they call candy skulls? That's a whole part of their culture
right.
that are not, they're not spooky. They're, they're their
Exactly.
relatives or whatever.
Exactly.
I don't actually know exactly what they are, but
I think the conversation with your kids about crystals would be so cool. Kids are so into crystals. They'll probably tell you more about it than you. Ask them what they think. They'll tell you what he's.
What would he say to me if he could talk? Right?
Yes.
Question, but
Consciousness flows through everything.
Okay. Yeah.
Even inanimate objects, but consciousness flows through everything, and consciousness has different intention. So the intention of the consciousness that flows through a tree or an animal or a rock is different to the intention of the consciousness that flows through a human or a star or a planet. So consciousness is flowing through everything, and there's different intention. And so the same with crystals. Crystals hold consciousness, and that it just has different intention. But definitely with the skull, I think you hit it on. The consciousness of crystals and them all being different hold a frequency which can help you amplify energy. And a crystal skull is more like a guide as well. It can help you amplify energy, but it also has wisdom to impart. Anyone else want to answer that? No? I'll tell you my experience of moving, having moved so many times. Sarah will relate to this. When I was living in the city before, I really felt like I wanted to get out of the city energy and have more of more nature, more beauty. More beauty was what I was really craving. Not that Sydney is not a beautiful city, because it really is. It has these amazing beaches and it's a beautiful city, but I was just wanting more natural beauty. And I remember spending a year or two actually going up to the northern beaches. I wanted to move up to Byron Bay, and I got a message not to move up there. And so I spent a couple of years going up to the northern beaches looking for a place to live. It was cheaper than where I was in the middle of the city, but I just didn't see anything, a place I wanted to live in that I could afford. It just didn't happen. But I held this intention of wanting to move and wanting more beauty in my life. And then a girlfriend rings me who's living up there, and she says, I'm having a party this weekend. Would you like to come up? I said, sure, I'd love to come up. So I go up, and she's living in this classic little old beach house that's teetering on the edge of a cliff, on a point, right out on the point. And there were views for days. Like, you looked that way, you saw right up the coast. You looked that way, you saw right down the coast. It was unbelievable. And it had this little swimming pool, and it was just the most gorgeous little place. And she said, I'm moving out of here at the end of the year. Would you like to move in? And I said, oh, what? I said, how much is the rent? And she's like, it's $230 a week. Can you imagine? 2 bedrooms. I had to share the house with a guy that was downstairs. It was actually an old, funky little 70s beach house that had an add-on that was like, it was on a hill, so the add-on was down. And so you had to walk down some stairs past the pool to go to the add-on. And he was renting the add-on part. And it was kind of separate, like he'd made his own kitchen. Even though there wasn't a kitchen down there, he'd made a makeshift kitchen. He's had his own bathroom, and he had 2 bedrooms down there too. So the whole house was like under $500, $470 or something. And we split the rent. Like, it was so cheap. And so I moved in there. The reason it was so cheap is at Christmas time, for about 4 or 5 weeks, you had to move everything you owned out so that the owners could come and use it for their holiday house. So that was a pain, but it was unbelievably cheap. I had views for days. It had a swimming pool. And the guy that lived downstairs, he was a Maori guy. He had a daughter who was exactly the same age as my daughter, and they became best friends. And today at 29, they're still best friends. Even though she's living in London, they're still best friends. And so the thing about moving is that life moves you. Like, life moves you. And it's the same where I live now. I never did intend to come back to the city, but life moved me back to the city and set me up. You know my story of how I live. And you have the intention or the desire, and then you just relax and let it happen. I tried, Vladdy, for 2 years, looking, fretting. And
I just got told, stop looking.
right. Yeah. You know, just like law of attraction works, I use the analogy of you're at the restaurant, you look through the menu, you decide what you want, you give your order to the kitchen cooks up your dinner, and you relax and wait for your dinner to come, and it comes. You don't go into the kitchen and tell the chefs how to cook the dinner and try and interfere with that process. So so it's that being in that place of allowing, which is the not looking, actually, because the looking is the stress. Like when you're looking, this has happened to me so many times, being thrown out of places, and I've had to go out and look. And I was in the streets of Bondi one day on a Saturday morning looking for somewhere to live and feeling stressed about it. And I bumped into my yoga teacher. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm looking for somewhere to live." And she said, "Oh, that's nice." And that was that. You know, we had a nice exchange. And then the next week I went to yoga, and she said to me, "Did you find somewhere to live?" And I said, "Oh, no, not really. I'm still looking." She said, "Well, look, I've got a house in Randwick. It belongs to my husband. Well, we own it. We don't live there. But he's got one of his students. He was a lecturer at the university. It's one of his students living there. If you don't mind living with a student, you're welcome to move in there." And she charged me like $300 a week. And this house was massive. Honestly, the living room was like a bowling alley. It had these 2 living rooms. It was massive. So $300 a week for the whole house. And then the student paid 90 or 80 of that, and so it just came to me because I had mentioned to my yoga teacher that I was looking for somewhere to live. Funnily enough, at the time I mentioned it to her, she didn't say that she had somewhere to live, which I thought was interesting. She said it the next time I went to yoga. And we lived in that house happily. And oh my God, it's amazing how this stuff happens. So just put it out there, Vladdy, that you're looking for somewhere to live. Put it out, like Sadie, put it out there to the universe, and put it out there to your friends. If you've got an option, I just always say, say yes to what shows up. If you've got an option that's standing in front of you right now, but you're not moving there because you've got a complaint about it, maybe that's the perfect option for you right now. And when you stop resisting that option, even if that option doesn't occur, you might open the energy for another option to come your way. But while you're resisting what's being given to you, like, "Oh, you can move in with me," you're going, no, I don't want to live with someone who complains. You're in an energy of resistance, like you're in the no, right? Instead of in the yes. So be in the yes. I'm open to all and everything that comes to me. I know that you've got my best interests at heart. You bring me exactly what I'm ready for, exactly what I need right now. Just be open in that a place of allowing for life, the universe, to bring you, what you want, but also what's, best for you. Like, I've moved in with some crazy people, and I had a landlord that was just the maddest. She was the maddest bitch, honestly. But she gave me some of the best experiences through her insanity. It was such an amazing experience. I won't go into the story now. The house was beautiful. It had views for days. It had a swimming pool. So the environment was delicious and luscious. But she lived underneath us, and she was this mad bitch. I'm sorry. She's screaming. She had this child who had cerebral palsy, and she had a little boy, and she just screamed at her kids all day, and we had to listen to her screaming at her kids all day. And she just turned around. She got really nasty and really horrible. But she gave me some of the best lessons I ever had, because I had to deal with her anger and her energy. And it was just at the time when I was going through it was horrible. But when I look back, it was such a great lesson for me. I won't go into it now because we don't have time. But yeah, life brings you what you need, especially when you're on an accelerated spiritual path. And you're saying, I want to be love and light, and I want to be non-judgment, and I want to be more connected to my source. Well, life says, okay, Can you handle Mr. Complainer and still be connected to your source? You know, it just like, just be open to what shows up. Be open and in the yes. Yeah. And don't worry. So interesting. Just like Sarah has moved 3 times in the last few months. Sometimes you might move into a place and it might not be the perfect place, but you'll meet someone there that will have a better place. Like, you know, sometimes you might move jobs or it's exactly, there's like, sometimes there are stepping stones along the way, but with all the experiences that you have, there's always a lesson to evolve a little bit more in everything that happens, so sometimes we can hold too tightly to what we want and it has to be exactly like that. You know, it has to be exactly like that. It's like going into the kitchen and telling the chefs how to make your dinner. Like when you look on the menu, you see the food that you're going to get, but you never know how it's going to turn out. Like sometimes I've been in restaurants and it's like, oh my God, I never expected it to look like that. And then you eat it and it's more delicious than you could have thought. So sometimes, you know, your desires, they always come, but they might not come exactly like you expect them to come. A lot of law of attraction teachers say, get really specific with details. And I say, no, get general, like Esther says, like get general, just be general. Just think about the feeling that you want. I want to feel safe. I want to feel free. I want to be happy. I want to, you know, like get general with what you want rather than specific, because the universe has in store for you and orchestrates things in a way that you could never imagine. So you might have a string of desires that you want, but be focused on one desire. And when you get that one desire, you'll see that all these other desires have been answered. So for instance, with when I moved up to the Northern Beaches, my desire was for beauty, and boy, did I get it. But being a single mum with an only child, my desire was also that Annika had friends, because she didn't have brothers and sisters. And then I move in with this little girl who's exactly her age and becomes her best friend. So it's like she got a sister as well, you know, like it makes me cry. So I got my beauty and I got out of the city and I got my swimming pool and my view, and she got a best friend, you know, like it was like, how cool was that? Like all these desires came together. So yeah, it's very cool how that happens. Yeah. So you just stay open. It's the best thing I can say. Like, just like Lisha said, just stay open. Don't be too exacting in what you think you have to have. Just stay open to what the universe brings you. Just focus on feeling good. Let the universe handle the details. Remember, the orchestration part of the creative process is not your work. Your work in all of this, Vladdy, is just to feel good. Like the step 1 is ask, step 2 is orchestrate, step 3 is allow. So the allowing part is just finding, Esther would say, pat the cat, you know, like just do things that feel good. Go to the beach, pat the cat, laugh with friends, like just feel good and let the universe, like let the chefs cook the meal. And while you're sitting at the table waiting for your meal to come out, enjoy the conversation. Like don't stress about when the meal's coming, how it's coming, what it's going to look like. Like that's the step 3 process. Just feel good. Be happy. Be happy, be happy, be happy. The universe has got your order and it's cooking up exactly what you want.
Because that's what I'm find myself struggling the most. Whenever I try to just simply have fun, especially last time, is I can feel that when I try to have fun, there is always that type of pain or something like that that comes always with it, and I'm wondering why. Because it's like it does not allow me to have fun, which is very odd. Because I know that I'm a person who enjoys life in pretty much every way possible, because I love how the birds are chirping outside. I love the snow falling outside. I love how the sun shines. I love so many things. I love pretty much everything that is. But why am I struggling then to have fun? It does not make sense to me at all.
Well, that's because there's a subconscious belief system. And just like we talked about at the beginning of this, it could come from your childhood, it could come from a past life. It doesn't actually really matter where it comes from, but it's living inside you. And so you have to look at it and thank it, but first of all, for giving you the experience of density and turn it around. And you're in a group with a whole lot of healers, so reach out to any of them and ask them to help you facilitate, you know, the inner child work or the past life work, and just to go exploring this energy of, you know, I'm not allowed to have fun. Where does it come from? Why has it been there? How has it served me? Because, you know, the thing about everything, it serves us. So we design it from our soul's perspective. We design our lives in order to experience the density and the trauma, because we learn so much from that. You know, like, how has it served me? Well, it put me on my spiritual path, and the fact that I still feel it keeps me seeking, keeps me asking more questions, keeps me there, you know, keeps me focused. Because if life was just so easy and I lived in a feathered nest, you know, if it was all too comfortable, I wouldn't stay focused on and exploring more and asking more questions and delving deeper into it. So contrast has a great way of serving us, because it also gives birth to desire. When you know what you don't want, you also know what you do want. So the fact that you know that you want to feel good is keeping you looking at ways that you can do that. It just keeps you on your spiritual consciousness journey. So that's the beauty of this work. Whenever you find a distortion that's active in your vibration, that's active in your field, it's serving you. It's there for a reason. When I found out that when I was 12, I decided to disappear, I asked how that served me. And my guide said to me that because I chose to come into a body that was, I'm pretty sure I am very connected to the mantids who play with DNA. I'm pretty sure I designed the DNA for my body. You know, I haven't looked after my body because I carry too much weight, but I have good genetics, right? Because I came into a body that had good genetics. They said it would have been really easy for you to get all caught up in what it is to be pretty and beautiful as a woman, you know, and be focused on that. So many women are so focused on their looks, right? And they said that wasn't what you were here to do in this lifetime. You were here to explore consciousness and to teach. And so that decision to disappear physically meant that it didn't have you focused on your looks and what that would bring you in life, because looks can bring you a lot of stuff, right? Look at really beautiful people. They can get a lot of stuff, you know, they use their looks to get things. And so they said, we didn't want you to do that. So it really served you that, you know, in sort of like wanting to disappear and focus on other things rather than what your looks could bring you. And I thought, wow, yeah, that makes so much sense. That's so true. Because when I was young, there were so many boys that wanted to date me. Everyone was like clamoring to be around me because I was pretty. And then that sort of wanting to disappear and, you know, like didn't make me focus on how I, you know, like, oh, everyone thinks I'm pretty. Aren't I fabulous? Aren't I fabulous? You know, I could have like really got caught up with that. And yeah, so everything that we design, the distortion including, serves us on our spiritual journey.
Yeah, now I'm feeling happy again because I found where it's coming from and it makes so much sense.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Big love to all of you. I'll see you next time.
See ya.
See you next
Love you all.
time.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you.
It was
Bye.
great. Thank you, everybody.
Love you all. Thank
See
you,
you.
everybody, for being here.
Nice to meet you.
Bye,
Have a great week.
Big
Have
love
a
to
great
you.
time, Karen.
Bye, everyone.